Did you know a tragic event in a small town near Manchester inspired one of the most famous paintings in British art history? That's right, it is a painting that shows a crowd of people gathering around a woman who drowned herself in a canal and reveals the bleakness and despair of life in the industrial era. In today's video, I'll tell you the tragedy behind An Accident by Lowry, a masterpiece of modern art. Lowry is best known for his paintings of industrial landscapes and urban scenes, populated by crowds of stylized figures, often referred to as matchsticks men. He painted the everyday life of the working class people in the north of England, capturing their struggles, joys, and sorrows. He had a unique style that combined realism and expressionism, using a limited palette of mostly white, black, gray, and brown. One of his most intriguing paintings is An Accident, which he made in 1926. It shows a scene inspired by an incident that Lowry witnessed in Pendlebury, Manchester, where he lived and worked for most of his life. The incident was a suicide by drowning of a woman who threw herself into a canal. Lowry saw the aftermath of the tragedy and decided to paint it. But before we get into the details of the painting, let's first talk about the life of the artist who created it. Lowry was born on November 1, 1887 at Shrouded in Lancashire. His father, Robert, was a clerk, and his mother, Elizabeth, was a musician who inspired to become a concert pianist. Since his birth, Lowry faced his mother's rejection. She wanted a girl and did not want to look at her newborn baby boy. He started drawing at the age of 8, and in 1903, he began private painting classes, which marked the start of a part-time education in art that was continued for 20 years. Lowry's early life was marked by loneliness, isolation, and unhappiness, something that reflects his artistic endeavors. He had a difficult relationship with his parents, especially his mother, who was domineering and depressed. She used illness as a means of controlling her husband and son, and often expressed her dissatisfaction with Lowry's career and artistic choices. Lowry once said that he had two great difficulties to contend with: my mother and myself. Lowry's early paintings were influenced by the Impressionists and the pre-Raphaelites, and showed scenes of rural and suburban life. He even experimented with different styles and techniques, but he was not satisfied with his work. He felt that it lacked originality and expression. In 1916, Lowry moved with his parents to Pendlebury, Manchester, where he lived and worked for most of his life. Pendlebury was an industrial town with factories, mills, chimneys, and canals, and Lowry was initially repulsed by the ugliness and the squalor of the place. He gradually became more fascinated by it with time. He said that, "At first, I detested it, and then, after years, I got pretty interested in it and then obsessed by it. One day, I missed a train from Pendlebury I had ignored for 7 years, and as I left the station, I saw the Ackman Spinning Company's mill. The huge black framework of rose and yellow-lit windows standing up against the sad, damp, charged afternoon sky. The mill was turning out. I watched this scene, which I looked at so many times without seeing, with rapture." Lowry began to paint with the industrial landscapes and urban scenes that will make him famous. He developed a distinctive style of painting that combined realism and expressionism. He used a limited palette of mostly white, black, gray, and brown, which he said was the color of Lancashire. He painted the everyday life of the working class people in the north of England, capturing their struggles, joys, and sorrows. One of the recurring themes of his painting is the representation of unpopulated landscapes, brooding portraits, and the unpublished marionette works, which were only found after his death. He was fascinated by the sea and painted pure seascapes from the early 1940s. Lowry's paintings were influenced by his own experiences and emotions. He said that, "I paint what I see in my own way." He painted scenes that reflected his loneliness, isolation, and unhappiness, and An Accident is one of the notable examples of that. He painted scenes that showed his empathy and compassion for the people that he took inspiration from, as well as his criticism of the society that he lived in. An Accident is one of the most intriguing paintings. It shows a scene inspired by an incident that Lowry witnessed in Pendlebury. The incident was a suicide by drowning of a woman who threw herself into a canal. Lowry saw the aftermath of the tragedy and decided to paint it. The artwork is said to be influenced by Lowry's own feelings of depression and despair. He said that, "I have never been happy. I have always been lonely." He also said that, "I have thought about suicide on several occasions, but if you are an artist, you have got your work to do." The painting is also influenced by Lowry's interest in religious imagery and themes. Lowry used perspective, contrast, symbolism, and irony to create a powerful and paradoxical effect. With that said, let us look at the details of the artwork and what it meant to symbolize. The painting is divided into two parts, the foreground and the background. In the foreground, we see an expanse of open space dotted with numerous figures coming from all directions to congregate at the lower right hand corner in the scene. Crowding around the victim of the accident, the figures are mostly dressed in dark colors, creating a contrast with the white ground. They are drawn with simple lines and shapes, without much detail or expression. They look like anonymous spectators and curious and indifferent to human drama unfolding before them. Lowry described them as matchstick men, referring to their apathetic nature towards the suffering around them. This creates a sort of disconnect between the audience and the figures as well. In the background, we see a row of Terrace houses, civic and industrial buildings, which are arranged across the composition like a stage set against which the activity happens. The buildings are also painted with minimal detail and color, being surrounded by a sort of misty veil. They create a sense of distance and attachment. They also represent the oppressive and monotonous environment that Lowry lived in and that drove many people to despair. The only signs of life are the smoke pouring from the chimneys and the windows that suggest some domestic activity. Furthermore, the only prominent color that can be seen in the paintings is red on front of the building. The painting has a strong sense of perspective and depth, achieved by using diagonal lines that converge at a vanishing point near the center of the scene. The perspective creates a dynamic movement that draws our eyes from the foreground to the background and back again. It also creates a tension between the two parts of the painting, as if they're competing for our attention. What is so special about this particular painting is that it's full of symbolism and irony. The title, An Accident, suggests that the event was unexpected and unintentional, but we know from Lowry's own account that it was actually a deliberate act of suicide. The title also implies that the event was insignificant and trivial, but we can sense from Lowry's choice to paint it that it had a profound impact on him. The title also contrasts with the fact that Lowry carefully planned and composed his painting using sketches and photographs as references. Another irony in this painting is the setting of the painting, how Lowry painted this tragic scene on a bright and sunny day with clear blue sky and white clouds. The lightness of the atmosphere contrasts with the bleakness of the subject matter, creating a paradoxical effect. Lowry once said that he liked to paint on sunny days because it puts me in touch with people. Perhaps he wanted to show that even in the most cheerful and ordinary moments, there can be hidden tragedies and sorrows. That is not all though. This painting also has a religious dimension. Some critics have also pointed out that the composition of this artwork resembles a crucifixion scene, with the victim at the center and the crowd around her forming a cross shape. The canal could also be seen as a symbol of baptism or purification, suggesting that the woman sought salvation or redemption through death. Lowry himself was not religious, but he was interested in religious imagery and themes. The painting is one of Lowry's earliest works to be acquired by a public collection when it was brought to Manchester Art Gallery in 1930. It is considered one of his masterpieces and one of the most personal and emotional paintings out there. It reveals Lowry's empathy and compassion for the people he painted, as well as his critical view of the society that he was a part of. Click on any of the two videos on the screen right now for more content.